Hey there, Hogsires. The draft is just 2 weeks away, and if you want to come watch the first round of the draft with us, you totally should. Come meet up with us. We're going to be at the Penn Quarter Sports Bar by the Navy Memorial Metro stop downtown. We hope to see you there, and just come out and hang out. It'll be a great time.
Welcome to the Hogsty with your crew, Adam Taraski, Alex Zeese, Sean Conti, and Steve Thomas. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
Okay, our next guest is Mr. Steve Shoup, who is the co-owner of Fanspeak.com, which is the home of everybody's favorite draft and off-season simulators, and by anyone's estimate is an expert in the upcoming 2017 NFL Draft. Welcome to the Hogsty, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, we're happy to have you.
We'd like to we're a Redskins show here, and so we'd like to just start right off with the Redskins. Fanspeak shows the Redskins team needs in order as D-line, safety, linebacker, running back, wide receiver, then quarterback and cornerback. With those needs in mind, who do you think the Redskins realistically are looking at in the first round at 17?
Well, the problem for me, I still believe that the D-line is the Redskins' biggest need. I would argue that the two guys we signed aren't as good as Chris Baker and rookie Gene Francois. So, it's almost like we've taken a step back on the defensive line. So I think D-line's the biggest need, but I don't know if there's anybody there that really fits the bill for the Redskins. You have Jonathan Allen, who's very likely to be off the board, and even if for some reason he's there, then maybe that means his injury situation is greater than most people in the media know. And then you have a guy like Malik McDowell. From a talent perspective, Malik McDowell checks all the boxes. From a work ethic, team leader, working with coaches' perspective, he checks none of the boxes. I mean, there's so many rumors out there that, he just did not get along with the Michigan State coaching staff, had issues with teammates, would show up late to practice, all that kind of stuff. So, from a Redskins perspective, is that a guy you want to take a shot at 17 and potentially really set your draft back if you miss on him? So I think that becomes a big issue along the defensive line. So I would look at other things, namely, I think running back, if Christian McCaffrey, maybe Dalvin Cook at that spot. I think you have to look long and hard still at inside linebacker, even after signing Zach Brown, because their top three inside linebackers are all impending free agents. So if Reuben Foster or Hassan Reddick's there, I definitely think they're in the mix. Other than that, you would have to go to maybe a position that isn't as strong of a need, like a corner, edge rusher, guys that they could use, but maybe aren't their biggest need.
Yeah, and as long as you're talking about Hassan Reddick, we did a little mock draft on our site, and Hassan Reddick won the draft, won for round one from our listeners. Now you have him listed as an edge, but our X's and O's guy Adam swears that Reddick really is an inside linebacker in the NFL. Can you talk a little bit more about Reddick's strengths and weaknesses as you see him?
I think it all depends on the scheme and the position. I think in a 3-4, Reddick is absolutely an inside linebacker, and probably in a lot of 4-3 teams he'd play off-ball linebacker, kind of similar to how Khalil Mack's been utilized or Bruce Irvin has been utilized in the Seattle system and now Oakland systems. Or even, we remember Brian Rakpo's first season, he was a linebacker, and he put his hand in the dirt on pass rushing downs and got 11 sacks as a rookie. So, I don't know if Reddick will be that dominant of a pass rusher, but I think most teams would love to incorporate his edge ability, his pass rush ability. It's too good to ignore. So, I think teams will value it differently. I think one of the better comps and comparisons is how we've seen the Packers utilize Clay Matthews, not this past year, but like the 2 years prior to that, where early downs he'd play inside because they just did not have the talent at inside linebacker. And then on pass rushing downs, he'd kick back outside and rush from the edge and, go up against offensive tackles. So, I kind of see it in that vein. Jamie Collins is another guy who's been utilized all over the field as an edge guy, pass rusher, off-ball linebacker, blitzer, however you need him. I think Reddick is an incredible talent, and I also think he really fits this Manusky defense because, Greg Manusky, if you look at some of the defensive schemes, Mark Bullock, who writes for the Washington Post, has done a great job breaking them down, and he really talked about how he likes to use the A-gap blitz. And Reddick would just be a beast at that. I mean, you line him and Cravens, and this is exactly what Mark Bullock said, that he lines up a safety and a linebacker over the A-gap. That's Cravens and Reddick, and you do that, and there's not an offensive coordinator in the league who would be happy to see that. So, that's the type of special talent that Reddick brings to the table, and you can just move him around. I think he can cover tight ends, he can cover backs out of the backfield, he can blitz from the edge, he can blitz inside. He should be good run support. So he's just a all-around jack-of-all-trades weapon, so to speak. And I think absolutely for the Redskins, he's an inside backer.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think just having Reddick and Zach Brown be our two linebackers with Sua Cravens in the box as a safety all of a sudden brings a whole nother look to the Redskins than they had last year. What was a huge weakness becomes a strength.
Yeah, absolutely. The speed and ability to match up versus tight ends and backs would be completely different. I mean, the Redskins gave up the most yards and catches, I believe, to tight ends last year. So, I mean, that just tells you how weak that was. And then, that's both linebackers and safeties, and that's why you bring in Swearinger, that's why you move Cravens, and that's why you bring in Brown and potentially Reddick as well. So, you completely change that outlook with those types of moves, and that's a good thing. I mean, the Redskins are in the division with Zach Ertz, a really talented tight end, Jason Witten, obviously not as fast as he once was, but he still gets the job done. So, that's definitely a need for them.
Switching sides, it seems like Gruden is starting to fall in love with the running backs in this draft. I think McCaffrey's been the name everyone keeps mentioning, at least that I see on social media. What do you think about that? I mean, can they afford to look offense in the first round I know it's a good defensive draft, but that seems to have a lot of people worried at the same time.
I understand why some are worried, but I do think it makes sense also. When you're a team that you're really good on one side of the ball, there's a lot of value in making sure you're excellent on that side of the ball. Grabbing a good defender, it's one thing, obviously, if we're talking like a Myles Garrett, just some elite defensive talent who can, make this massive difference. But we're talking about the difference between taking and don't get me wrong, I love Hassan Reddick, and he would be one of my top guys. But, even if we were talking Reddick, or say we're not talking Reddick and talking to Zach Cunningham or somebody along those lines, or cornerback, versus what you could get the next round or the round after, I think there's a much bigger gap between that running back or Christian McCaffrey and who you're getting in the second and third round than those other positions and who you'd be getting in the second and third round. And a guy like Christian McCaffrey can just be that icing on the cake. I mean, our passing game was extremely good last year, especially facing one of the toughest defensive schedules. According to Football Outsiders, it was the toughest defensive schedule last season. So adding that running threat to balance the offense would be huge. And McCaffrey obviously is more than that. He's a major weapon in the passing game and could be utilized as such, and really just create a mismatch nightmare for basically every team, because there's going to be very, very few safeties and linebackers who have any shot at covering Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield or in the slot. So,
yeah, I was very impressed with McCaffrey at the combine. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I really wanted to stop you because you said something interesting. That you mentioned the talent gap in running backs between the first and second round. And to me, Joe Mixon is a wild card in here. And I bring up Mixon specifically because he's another guy that our listeners, voted that they wanted the Redskins to draft him. And clearly he's got the assault charge, out there that's hanging out there. But from a talent perspective, I've seen experts who say Mixon is the best of the bunch. I've seen some of them think that he's a step down. Where does Mixon fit in to you?
Ignoring for a second the whole assault aspect of charges and all that, from a pure talent perspective, I think Mixon is a first-round talent. I actually would think he's right in the mix with McCaffrey. I wouldn't put him above Fournette. Dalvin Cook's workouts are somewhat of a concern, but Mixon is a talent. But one thing that I think should be kept in mind with Mixon is we have to look at the conference that he played in. While we talk about the Power 5 conferences, there's 4 conferences, and then there's the Big 12. The defenses in the Big 12 are just nowhere near the level of competition that we see in the other Power 5 conferences. And the only good defense in that conference is Oklahoma. So Mixon never faced, the best defense in the conference. So, to me, that is a big factor. And, multiple guys, I know Marcus Mosher of Bleacher Report, and I believe it was Graham Barfield, I'm not sure where he's writing now, they both did studies on what kind of defenses backs faced in college. And Mixon faced less than 7 defenders one of the highest percentages of time. So not only do you have a bad defenses to begin with, but then he's facing light boxes of 6 defenders. A guy like that's just going to run all over them, especially when he's got the talent of Oklahoma surrounding him and the passing game threat. So to me, I do think that kind of stuff is a factor. There's no doubt Mixon's athletically gifted. He makes plenty of splash plays. He's a talent, but I think I would pump the brakes just from a pure talent perspective when I look at the whole picture of Mixon. Again, this is not any of the off-the-field stuff. Just because the conference that he plays in and the fact that he is on the only really good all-around team in that conference does give me some concern. It's the same reason why, Foreman, who had this tremendous year for Texas, doesn't get as much credit because of the offense he was in, the conference he plays in. And, Mixon, I think he's a talent, but I think that I would definitely take Fournette above him, and I'd probably take McCaffrey and maybe Cook above him as well, just from a pure talent perspective.
The myth of Mixon outweighs the reality of Mixon, huh?
I feel a little bit. I feel people go over. I mean, you can find the highlight. I mean, there's no doubt. You watch him, and you're going to see some amazing runs, amazing plays. But I feel like there's a little bit more hype surrounding him for, whatever number of reasons. But, I don't think he gets the knock on conference as, obviously a guy who's not in a Power 5 conference or is playing, FCS football would get. So,
sure.
I just think that we go a little over the top on Mixon versus, when you look at what Fournette faced or what McCaffrey faced, the defenses they faced, the 8-man boxes that they faced, things like that. And in Fournette's case, I mean, he had 0 passing threat attack. I mean, everyone was just putting 9 guys in the box, knew he was getting the ball. So, there's differences there that I think get glossed over a little bit, in part because Oklahoma, it's a Power 5 conference, but I just don't think it's on the same level as running backs in these other 4 big conferences.
So I want to switch gears and let's talk about, we've talked about some of these, first round kind of talent. The second round, we're probably going to look defensive line in the second round more likely than the first round, it seems like to me, unless, 1 or 2 big names fall like Allen. We're probably going to look in the second round for that nose tackle because that's what I think the Redskins really need. Who are some of the names that you think will still be there when we pick at 17 in the second? And is there an ideal nose tackle at that point for us?
Personally, I'm not as high on the defensive line class, especially when it comes to like second round talents. I think the way I kind of look at it, I think Allen and McDowell are your first round talents. I think Caleb Brantley and Martavius Adams, those are my 3 and 4 guys. Those are second round guys. And I don't think either is a true nose tackle. So if that's like really what you're looking for, I don't know if they fit that bill as well. And then third and fourth, I think, have a lot more depth and more guys who I think fill that nose tackle role. One of the guys I really like is Dalvin Tomlinson. I'd look at him in the third round from Alabama. I think he would be a perfect nose tackle. He could go higher because, other teams need that nose tackle as well. Another nose tackle, a real nose tackle fit Eddie Vander does from UCLA. He has had some injury issues the last couple of years, but he came back healthy at the Senior Bowl, looked really good, and he'd fill that nose tackle role as well.
Okay. I mean, I just I'm thinking the Redskins. Yeah.
There's other draft analysts who would definitely push some of these guys higher or view them differently. I just, the way I look at this defensive line class is it's solid. You're going to have a lot of solid contributors, role players, a few decent starters, but I don't think you're going to have a lot of difference makers. I don't think you're going to have a lot of impact guys coming from this defensive line class.
More Jags than studs.
Not necessarily that these guys can't play, but I think the upside of these guys are, kind of like the guys we just signed, like Terrell McClain and McGee, good, solid guys who are good on early down, whether, some of them are going to be more pass rushing focused, some are going to be more run stuffing focused, but I don't think you're going to have those complete players who you're going out and looking, not necessarily, and I'm not even talking year one, I'm talking years 2, 3, 4, et cetera, where they're going to be 75% players, guys like Chris Baker who are the fact, starters, or full-time starters, I should say. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of these guys can play in the NFL, and a lot of these guys can carve out their niches in the league. But that's why I'm not that high on taking many of them in the top 2 rounds, because I feel you're looking for starters in those 2 rounds.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. As the Redskins went into the offseason, safety was obviously one of, if not the biggest need, and obviously it got better with DJ Swearinger, but nonetheless, it wouldn't surprise me if the Redskins didn't draft a safety, particularly free safety type. In terms of safeties, you've got Jabril Peppers, you've got Budda Baker, and the guys at the top of the draft. But who's realistic in terms of safeties? Do you think for the Redskins in the first few rounds?
Well, I think the good news for the Redskins is this has got to be one of the deepest safety classes we've seen in quite some time. I mean, and most of these guys are versatile enough to play free safety. Some are probably, better strong than free, but there's a lot of versatility there. And look around the league, plenty of good teams love that versatility with their safeties to begin with. So, I think you got to assume that Jamal Adams and Malik Hooker are off the board. I'm not as big of a fan of Jabril Peppers, especially for what the Redskins are looking for, because I worry that he's a little bit too much like a Cravens or a Swearinger, where athlete can do a little of everything, but not necessarily 100% refined as you want him, especially in a free safety role. That's not a knock on him. I just don't think he fits the Redskins as he would some other teams. I'm a big Obi Melifonwu fan from UConn. I think he's just huge size, athlete. He can play free. He can play strong safety. I think you utilize him similar to how the Cowboys utilize his former teammate Byron Jones, where he's a free safety in the early downs. On key third downs, he comes up and he'll cover the tight end, and then they'll put somebody else back there at free safety. So I think you can do a lot of different things with a guy like that, and I think that makes him special. I think Marcus Williams and Budda Baker are more natural free safeties. Baker's a little shorter, but we see guys like T.J. Ward handle that fine at roughly the same height. I think once you're talking like late second, early third round, I think you add guys like Josh Jones from NC State, who played a lot of strong safety in college, but he's got the athleticism and range for free safety. Justin Evans from Texas A&M, another guy who played either safety role. Eddie Jackson, he's coming off the leg injury at Alabama, but it's not like an ACL, it's not an Achilles, it's a broken leg. So, that you have a much higher chance of bouncing back from and not having future issues with. So I think those are the guys, and probably Desmond King, who's going to be transitioning from a corner role into a free safety role. Those are kind of like your late second, early third round guys. So that's a deep, deep group that you can find guys for the Redskins in that second or third round.
All right.
Well, it's good to hear, and let's do this one quickly because hopefully this isn't a Redskin thing, but I gotta ask Mitchell Trubisky. He came up. I did a mock draft on your site this morning, knowing we were going to talk, and Trubisky all of a sudden is drafted by the 49ers. I personally, I just don't get it. I don't get why he's even in the first round. What the heck are these teams seeing in Trubisky?
Well, the thing with him is that, he only had 1 year, but it was a good year, and he did a lot of little things, not at a consistent level that you'd love to see, especially for a first-round pick, but what it boils down to, of course, is just teams are just so desperate for quarterbacks. The teams always overdraft quarterbacks, whether it's a good or a bad decision, and I think that's just kind of a thing that could again happen this year, because none of these quarterbacks, I think, stand out, and you're saying that this is the next Andrew Luck, Jameis Winston type who, like that, that guy should definitely go top 5 picks and be a franchise guy. So, everyone's looking for that, though. I mean, there's so many teams that need quarterbacks immediately, like the 49ers and Jets and Browns, of course. But we also have a ton of teams. I mean, look at the ages of these quarterbacks around the league. I mean, how many quarterbacks are 31 years or older? So where are they going to be in 2, 3, 4 years? I mean, Pittsburgh had the minor scare right after the playoff game when Ben Roethlisberger didn't fully commit, and are they really looking at Landry Jones going forward? And Arizona has seen the decline in Carson Palmer. And, these other teams. I mean, how much longer is Eli and Rivers, same year, drafted the same year as Roethlisberger, going to last? And even a guy like Aaron Rodgers. I mean, can we really say that he's going to play another 5 years? I mean, he might just 3 or 4 years from now say, hey, I'm done. We've seen it before. So,
sure.
I think that's lesser than some of these other guys, of course, but there's a lot of age among the top tier quarterbacks in the league right now. So you could make a case for about half the teams in the NFL needing a franchise quarterback this year or going forward. And that's why you're going to see teams overdraft them. And then, of course, this is the one thing where that 5th-year option with first-round picks really does come into play, because that value, as we see with the Kirk Cousins situation, is huge. Having that 5th-year option for a young quarterback is a lot of extra value for a team.
Okay. Steve gets very concerned about people overdrafting quarterbacks these days.
Yeah, I hate it, and the Trubisky thing just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
But
I get it, and this is, to me, there's no better argument for the Redskins re-signing Kirk Cousins than this, because you go back on the quarterback need carousel, and 9 times out of 10, that's a terrible place to be on. I mean, unless you end up with the top overall pick, and it just happens to be a year that a franchise quarterback comes out, which is not always the case, you're in trouble. I mean, look at what the Rams did last year to get Jared Goff. I mean, but they had no choice. I mean,
you're trying to get lucky almost.
Exactly.
And it still might not work.
Yeah. So I got some questions, because I love your guys' website, Fanspeak. I've been using it for mock drafts for probably about as long as you guys have had it out, at least 4 years now, right?
Yeah, this is our 4th year.
Yeah. Here's what I like. I'm not a college football guy that much. I went to Temple. My school sucked when I went there, so I never really followed football. So I love it because it helps me learn who the players coming out are. I start looking up information on who might be there when the Redskins need them, things like that. How do you guys kind of come up with the draft boards and stuff for that? Because you seem to get your board in order way before everybody else does.
Well, I start actually looking ahead now to really start looking at, and at this point it is a lot of guesswork. It's
sure.
Looking at the seniors, trying to identify. I don't try and throw too many underclassmen out there, and I'll be late. This year especially, we had a lot of like redshirt sophomores come out, and those are much harder to predict because they have 2 more years of eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'll try and throw like the top 50, 60 juniors that I think, and I know some of those guys are definitely going to go back to school, but
sure.
I just want to put them out at this point because we don't know. I mean, at this point in time, I definitely did not have. I knew Mitch Trubisky would become the starter at UNC, and I'd heard a lot of good things about him. He was highly recruited, all those things, and when he had played, he had looked well. But I, of course, had no inclination that he was going to be coming out. And same with Deshaun Kaiser. I mean, he had a good year, redshirt freshman year, but I had no inclination that he was going to come out. So there's definitely some guesswork. But then I try and utilize resources when the Senior Bowl over the summer will put out their like watch list, and that will help me kind of look at players and tighten up my rankings maybe a little bit, guys that they're clearly high on, and I'll try and watch them. Obviously, great resources like NFL Draft Breakdown, which does all these. I mean, they're producing clips all throughout the summer, so that really helps me a lot as well. But it's definitely a lot of guesswork. But like you said, it's a good tool to get prepared and looking at these college guys. And part of the reason why I look to do something for the next year right after the draft is so I start watching these guys and start, thinking about it and creating my own sort of rankings and listings and stuff like that and who to watch. So it's a process for sure, but it's, it's fun and obviously I enjoy it. It is funny to look at sometimes of what I initially rank guys and where they end up.
Oh, sure. I actually, because I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to this stuff, I've actually archived a couple of my old ones that I've done over the years, and then I go back and look back at them myself. I had one mock draft where I actually had picked Josh Doxson for some reason that I found for the Redskins, which was pretty fun.
And you're more than a little nerd when it comes to the draft, Alex. Don't lie
I do about
to me.
50 of these every offseason. I depending on if the Redskins are in the playoffs, I might start, week 15. Okay, my one other thing that I've kind of been wondering about your whole site, are you guys tracking which teams get the most use? But when people are doing these mock drafts, I kind of wondered, what fan base is the most obsessed?
We can track a little bit of that. Browns are definitely by far this year the number one, and then I think part of it might be just because. I've written for Hogs Haven, and I do a lot of Redskins sites. And I have some contacts with some Eagles and
right. You're a local boy. We didn't really
sites.
mention that, but you're from you live in the DC area, right? So
yeah. I live in Virginia, so I have some contacts with some other NFC East sites and bloggers and stuff like that. So after that, Browns, then it's like all of the NFC East teams. Redskins are typically number one. Eagles, we get a lot from. Cowboys, we get a ton from.
Sure.
So, and Giants are well up there also. And then, some of the, of course, bigger things. I mean, part of it is like you said, teams that are out early, they're doing it much early. A team like the Steelers, they have a diehard fan base, but they're in it till the third week of the playoffs. So, they're not as invested.
So basically, you have like 3 guys from the whole New England area doing it every year.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's
they don't care.
They trade away all their draft picks. So, like, come on.
Yeah. You're not getting that Boston fan base.
Yeah, I know. We need to capitalize. That's a good market.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I could talk to you all night about this, but unfortunately we can't. We have run over the time on this, so we'd like to thank you very much for joining us on our show and talking some draft with us, and we'd like to have you back again someday.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'd love to come back.
Well, there you guys have it. That was the Steve Shoup interview that we did, the founder and brain behind Fanspeak. And, that was an interesting thing. I could have talked to him all day about the technical side of their website, but I'm sure that would bore most people to tears.
Yeah, it would have bored me, but I could have talked to him all day about players.
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating, personally.
Yeah, and I didn't realize he's a local boy, which is cool. So
yeah, we should have known that. But the other thing is, it's his sister is the co-owner of that thing with him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if she's behind the scenes or what, because he seems to be the person out front with Fanspeak.
Yeah, maybe.
But but I thought it was fascinating, and I thought he had a lot of real interesting stuff to say. From a Redskins perspective and just kind of generally about all these players.
Yeah. Now we have Jamal actually with us as well for the second half of the show. He's calling in. So Jamal, hey, how's it going? Other than the fact that your computer's having issues.
Yeah, I really don't know what the issue is. For some reason, my computer started to act funny on me this week. I had a senior comp exam on Wednesday. Or Thursday, so it's just been acting weird for whatever reason. When I want to get right, it can't get right. So I'm doing all right personally, but yeah, we just pushing through this, making it work.
And right now the people at Dell and Hewlett Packard are very excited and are about to pound down Jamal's door, I think.
Oh yeah.
Well, they better fix his laptop ASAP.
Well,
I got stuff to do, man.
I no longer work for Dell. The people who I worked for Dell, that branch got sold off to some Japanese company. So I don't work for.
Well,
Sadly, I can't. I don't have an in there anymore.
Well, I gotta say that the draft cannot come soon enough. NFL, if you're listening out there, please move the draft up.
Oh yeah.
Move it up a week because I think we've drug it on long enough. And I get what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I get, the idea is they want something once a month,
Right.
because February is a combine, March is free agency, April, they're kind of mixing April and May together because there's not much going on in May. But for the love of God, let's make it sooner because I'm tired of waiting.
And the draft used to be a different time of the year. I mean, it used to be sooner. It wasn't that long ago, right?
It was a couple weeks earlier in the year.
Yeah. I mean, I wish it was happening by now. I almost wish the draft it all happened in like a 3-week span after the Super Bowl or something. But I think that might be unrealistic.
Yeah, that's not
actually
what
probably be a little bit worse of a situation than where we're in now.
Yeah.
Think about all the dead time, man. I'd be driving crazy, man. I think good thing for you is you're an AFL fan, so
Yeah.
it's not too bad for you.
No. I think year-round football. That's why I love it so much.
And the NFL's great when it comes to marketing with this stuff. You got to hand it to them.
I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I miss NFL Europe a little bit. That
Yeah.
hold me too.
Yeah, because that was played right around the same time now as well. And
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Well, you guys want to get into draft stuff?
Yeah, why don't we get into it? Since it's a quiet week, we're going to cover 2 positions this week, guys. First, we're going to talk a little running backs, and then we're going to go into the quarterback situation in the draft.
Okay.
So should be fun. I think running back, Steve is going to take the front on this. Jay Gruden loves himself some of these running backs. So, I think this is something we got to pay attention to.
Yeah, and so, this is going to be our draft preview for the running backs, and so I'm going to run through a bunch of names and give you guys some details on all these running backs. This is not up on our website yet. It will be at some point. It's not yet, but here we go. So, obviously, I'm just going to run through from top to bottom here.
Go for it.
The first running back on the list, in rank order on almost everybody's board is Leonard Fournette. He's not a candidate for the Redskins because he's a top 10 projection. But this guy's your classic downhill runner, from ages gone by. He didn't have a particularly good combine. He weighed in at 240 pounds. He ran a little slower than he wanted at 4.51. But this guy's averaged 6.2 yards per attempt in college. Over 3 years, 29 games, 3,830 yards. He only had 41 receptions, but that's not really his game. This guy is your classic A-gap, downhill, power back.
Yeah.
Excuse me. He's not going to make anybody miss or too many people miss. He's just going to run over you, and that's Leonard Fournette. I mean, the benefit to him also is he played at LSU. LSU hadn't had a passing game, worth a tinker's darn for a while now. And so he is the offense, as Steve Shoup said in his interview that you just heard. So that's Leonard Fournette. I'm not going to spend too much time on him because, again, he's not a Redskins candidate. Unless, Jamal, you have some comments on Fournette.
Well, as far as Fournette, I actually thought it was kind of pretty impressive that he ran a 4.5 at 250 or however much he weighed. Because a guy that size, he was 240, right?
Yeah, 240. But when he was playing over the year, he was supposed to be in the 220s. It sounds like he put him.
And two is well.
Go ahead.
Well, he was actually 228 at the LSU Pro Day, so he lost all the weight.
Okay.
By the time the Pro Day came out.
That's a big flag to me.
He said most of it was like more water weight, but that's why it was easy for him to lose that.
Do you know how many gallons 12 pounds of water is?
I mean, mostly water weight. I wasn't. Yeah, you're right. That is a lot that would have to be a lot. But now I was just saying, he was just stating, and I forget where I heard the interview, but from his mouth. You know, he was used to playing at like 235, between 235 and 240. Like that's what he was playing at most of the season anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to run a 4.5 at that you know that height and weight, obviously, you know, it's pretty impressive for me. In terms of Fournette, Steve already said it all. That's basically what he'll do. You know, he does have the vision. Like for me, and I like in the games that I saw against Alabama, and Alabama will probably do this against for most running backs. The one issue that I had, and I've said this before, and I don't care if people want to fight my opinion, I did have concern like when the defenses were better. I felt like sometimes he did lack the vision as a running back that's needed. So that's one of the knocks. I haven't watched. I'm not no college scout. I'm not that type of guy, but like I watch college games weekly, and that's just what I noticed when I seen him play the better defenses. Sometimes he did lack the vision in terms of like cutback lanes, opportunities on the backside. So those are the things that I noticed with Fournette. But otherwise, everything that Steve said is right. Like he is probably the best running back in the class. But that's just a small issue that I have with him. Maybe that can get corrected with Coach Nelson.
Well, yeah, no, I think you're right. You know, and that is the downside in his game. And yeah, 4.5 is fast for a guy his size, but he was talking about running on a 4.4. So that's that's why it was disappointing from that respect. But now I did not try. I'll just tell you guys, I did not. I'm hashtag not a scout. Right. I did not try to give my own rankings of these running backs. And so instead, from a rankings perspective, these are Walter Football's rankings.
All right, go ahead.
Because I respect Walter Football. So the number 2 guy by Walter Football is Dalvin Cook. Some outlets have McCaffrey rated ahead of him, but we'll roll with Walter. He's 5'10", 210. Ran a 4.49 40. He was also a junior. Played in 38 games. Averaged 6.5 yards per attempt with Florida State. 687 attempts, which is a lot. Had 679 receptions, 935 yards, 46 rushing TDs. The thing with Dalvin Cook is this: he's had a lot of off-the-field concerns at Florida State. The allegations are that he's not necessarily a gangbanger type, but he's hanging with people who are. So he has some bad influences around him. There were rumors reported that he drank too much. He's been arrested before and sort of escaped from any serious repercussions as a result. And so some, NFL front offices and scouts have a lot to do with regard to looking into him personally. That having been said, he's a heck of a running back. Sure. The comparison you're going to hear is Marshall Faulk. He's similar. He's got great acceleration. He's a potential future third down back. He didn't really run well in the combine, the NFL combine, but he did better in the pro day. The thing about him is when Jameis Winston was there in 2015, he actually averaged a full yard per carry better, which isn't surprising. Right. He averaged 7.4 yards per attempt in 2015 compared to 6.1 in 2016 when he was basically the entire Florida State offense by himself.
What do you mean? 14? Because 15, I think. 15 was rookie year for Winston.
No. Last year was. Did I get it wrong? We'll look it up here real fast.
I don't know if you meant 2014 or 2015, but yeah, rookie year for Winston was 2015. You don't remember that 31-24 comeback against the Bucks last year or 2 years ago?
Okay, point is, the year he played with Winston, I'll pull it up here in a minute. 16 was a bit of a down year in that regard.
Right.
For him, but he is most definitely an elite prospect, provided that you can get past his off the field issues. And I was right. It is 2015. He averaged 7.4 yards per carry. 2014, 5.9 yards per carry, and then 2016, 6.1 yards per carry. So that was his collegiate production. I like him as a prospect. I'm not too excited about bringing a guy with that much baggage into Washington.
Sure.
It's the projection. He's definitely round one back, but the projections are anywhere from 10 10 to bottom of the round, depending on who you talk to.
Mid to late, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jamal, what do you think about Cook?
In terms of Cook, I do understand all the hype behind him. He's an explosive back, he's a playmaker, and that's one of the things that we like to do running back position. You look at Rob Kelly. Well, for example, like when we talked about Fournette, I personally I wouldn't want him in this offense, not necessarily because like he's a bad player, but just not the fit. When you look at Dalvin Cook, he's the type of guy where I prefer him along with I don't know. I'm pretty sure McCaffrey's on the list that you're about to finish, and I'm not sure if Alvin Kamara's on the list as well. But point is, those three that I just named, Cook, Kamara, and McCaffrey, are people that I prefer. Cook is a guy who's a playmaker, like I just stated. He's a guy who can take any carry from any point of the field, and you can count on him taking it to the house.
Yeah.
And we don't have that type of ability in our backfield already. A lot of people might point to what's his name, Mac Brown, but he's had one game in the pros as a pro in the regular season, and it was against the Bears, who were struggling with injuries at that point in time. He had a good final game of the preseason, but we just don't know anything out of him to necessarily point to him and say he can do it. We just don't have that type of guy. So Dalvin Cook brings a lot of expansion to the backfield and a lot of headaches to any opposing defensive coordinator. So
I'm with you. I think him and McCaffrey, they both have that kind of, they find the hole, they get going through it, and they just accelerate all the way down the field. As that's what our offense kind of is built for. It's not this zone blocking kind of thing. It's just find that one gap and go.
And for the record, I did screw up my Winston reference. It can all be winners, people. Sue me. File a lawsuit. Winston was 2014. Then 2015, when he averaged 7.4 yards per carry, that was post Winston. So
right.
Hey, I blew it. Sorry. Number 3 on the list, Christian McCaffrey, Stanford, 5'11", 202 pounds, ran a 4.48. He's also a junior. Played 37 games in college. Averaged 6.2 yards per attempt on 632 carries, 99 receptions for 1,206 yards, 10 touchdowns as a receiver, 21 touchdowns as a running back, 12.2 yards per catch. In 2016, he ran for 1,603 yards and had 37 receptions. He's got a really, in contrast to Cook, this Christian McCaffrey has a sterling locker room reputation. Good leader, good teammate, hard worker.
Plays the harmonica, apparently.
Yeah, he does. There's a YouTube video out there of him and his buddy doing Piano Man by Billy Joel. Yeah. He blew everybody away at the combine. McCaffrey, more than any of these other running backs, just wowed the combine. He's got tremendous acceleration, tremendous explosiveness. He's an elite level route runner, great hands. The downside to McCaffrey, for you guys who are just gaga over him, is he's just not a power runner. He's not an NFL caliber power runner.
No.
And he's thinner than Cook. He's not built quite like Dalvin Cook is. He's the same. He's a little bit taller than Cook, but yet weighs less. The issue is, can Christian McCaffrey be an every down back? I don't think he can. And my concern with him is if he's an overlap with the capabilities of Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson does sort of the same things for the Redskins in terms of receiving. I think he's a better prospect than Thompson. But the issue is if his skills are overlapping. And so the projection on McCaffrey is anywhere from mid round 1 to bottom of round 2. Personally, I think he's going to go round 1 just because this combine was so impressive. So, excuse me, that's an overview of McCaffrey. Jamal, what do you think?
Like I stated, Cook, McCaffrey, and Kamara are my top 3 personally. But I actually have I have McCaffrey ahead of Cook. So that would be the first person I would want in terms of a running back with the Redskins. I'm not necessarily part of the group, and I understand the questions, but I'm not personally a part of the group that feels that he may have issues being a 3-down back. I don't think he'll have those issues here. I don't think he'll have those issues anywhere. But I do feel like the way anybody would use him is just the fact that he's so versatile. So you don't necessarily have to use him in the backfield to get like 20 carries out of him. You could get him about 20, 25 touches a game, maybe. Probably
Sure.
about 15 carries. It's just all about how you use him, and I think that's the most important thing. And I'm not sure if you guys heard the All 32 the other day, but
Yes.
we also had the argument about McCaffrey as well. Like we don't necessarily. There's a good argument out there for people, and I don't understand why people get mad. But because this was actually, I posted this on Twitter as well. But it was a good argument from Montel made that he doesn't feel like gadget players should be drafted in the first round. I don't think they help your team as more importantly as a more prominent running back or a guy who can tote about 25 carries a game. And the biggest question, like Steve stated, was is he an every down back? And Montel's argument was that he don't even believe that he can run in between the tackles consistently because of the fact that he looks like he's a first a gadget back, but then he may be also small as well.
I think he's more than a gadget back. I don't know if McCaffrey's just a gadget back, and I think that's really not fair to him for those who are calling him just a gadget back. My issue with McCaffrey is what you said is, can he hit the A gap?
Right.
If it's 3rd and 1, and granted Jay Gruden doesn't do it very often, but if we're going to call, a power I formation and run behind Trent Williams, can McCaffrey get it done? And that's the question mark I have with him, and that's what I'm not sure he's going to excel at in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I understand
agree.
that.
Like, I agree with you as well, Steve. Like, I don't think he is a gadget back, but just the argument that was made for myself, I thought it was pretty strong. And for someone, if you don't think that he's that type of person who can run between the tackles consistently, then hey, maybe you shouldn't be drafting him in the first round. But I mean, I feel the same way as you that he's definitely a guy who can. Well, you have your questions, but I feel like he's definitely not a gadget back, is what I should say.
I'm 100% sold on McCaffrey personally. I think, the fact that he can be a dual threat and can catch the ball, can run well with the ball. His size might be a little small, but you know what? There are plenty of examples of running backs who became feature running backs for teams, like Brian Westbrook built the exact same way.
Tiki Barber.
Tiki Barber's a little bigger,
Jamal
probably.
Charles is 5'11", like 195.
Yeah. And Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles is even smaller than this guy, and you would put the ball in his hands in most situations.
I wouldn't run Darren Sproles between the tackles.
No, probably not between the tackles, but
but look, here's the thing.
I think if that's his floor, is being another Darren Sproles, I mean, that's pretty damn good.
Jay Gruden doesn't do a lot. The way Jay Gruden runs the ball, he's not going to run it out of a power I very often.
No.
That's just not the way he runs the ball. And so
he never runs out of the power I. He doesn't know what a fullback is.
Yeah, right, exactly. He never does that, ever. I think the reason why Jay clearly likes him, from the chatter, that's in the media, and I think Jay is pretty wowed by McCaffrey. And the reason is McCaffrey, of all these top guys, he's the best. We're going to get to Kamara next, and Jamal mentioned Kamara. He's also a good receiver, but I think McCaffrey is the guy who wows people as a receiver, and I think that's why Jay likes him. Let's get to Kamara. Walter Football had Kamara ranked number 4. Jamal, you just said you had him ranked number 3. He's out of Tennessee. He's 5'10", 214, ran a 4.56 40. He's also a junior. He only played 2 years, 24 games in college. Only had 210 attempts. He did split carries with someone else at Tennessee, which is why his number of attempts are down. Averaged 6.2 yards per attempt, 16 touchdowns, had 74 receptions for 683 yards. In 2016, played 11 games, 103 attempts, 596 yards for 5.8 yards per attempt with 9 touchdowns. This is your Jamal Charles comp, really. He's a classic slasher. He has some power, probably more power than McCaffrey. Maybe not quite as elusive, though, as McCaffrey. He's a great receiver. The concern, again, with Kamara is whether he's an every down back. Is he big enough? Is he enough of a power guy to get hard yards inside? I've seen projections. Walter Football had him projected as bottom of round 1 to round 3, depending on how the draft goes. I don't think he's a round 1 back. I think he's probably a round 2 guy myself. Jamal, what's your? I know you
must make
like.
you happy because I know you don't want a running back in round 1 anyway.
No, I don't. Not this year for the Redskins.
Yeah, Steve been on a mission, man, these last few weeks, man.
Yeah,
I am defense.
Yeah,
Tell us
definitely.
what you think. I know you like Kamara, Jamal. What do you think?
Yeah, I love with him as far as his play style. I want to say last year, if I'm not mistaken. I know this past season is where he started making a lot of noise, but I think I've seen him play last year too, where he just caught my attention. But this year was the year where he really had a big season, specifically because I think he started getting more playing time. I really wish I remembered the running back that they had, but he's transferring. But it was a running back you spent time with, like you said. But personally, I like Kamara because of the fact that he does have, he has really good feet in terms of, inside the tackles. He knows how to work in traffic well. He has decent vision. I can't say it's excellent or very good. I don't really know for sure, but I know his vision is very decent. But the thing that I like is the fact that he knew what to do in the open field. He also made plays in the passing game, and it's a lot. First off, there's not many backs that I've seen. This isn't like a major compliment, but I just don't see many backs in the college game line up out wide and take a variety of handoffs as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what I meant by that is just simply they use him as a number 1 back, but they also, it's just like McCaffrey. They use him as a number 1 back, but at the same time they use him in the slot as well. And his route running is very. He's a slasher. He does the one cut and he goes. And this is the thing that I value with him. And he's I think like 5'10", maybe 215.
Yeah, 5'10", 215 is top 5'10", 214 is what I've seen.
Yeah, all right. So 5'10", 214, and he's way bigger than McCaffrey. So, I shouldn't say way bigger, but I would say he's probably just built a little bit more.
He's a little bulkier.
Yeah, a little bit bulkier. That's the better word. But I do think he's the type of guy who can, if we don't give McCaffrey, we can probably find Kamara if he does slip past the second and the third. So I definitely will look for him in the second or third, depending on what we do in the first. So
I mean Kamara. I think Kamara is sort of a poor man's McCaffrey in terms of draft. In terms of draft grades and positioning. So, yeah, if you don't grab McCaffrey, Kamara does a lot of the same things. Let's move on. I'm going to blow through the rest of these a little bit faster here. Walter Football has Donta Freeman. We're going to get to Joe Mixon for you guys who love Joe Mixon, but Walter Football had Donta Foreman ranked number 5. This is the running back out of Texas, 6', 233, ran a 4.5, 540. Mm-hmm. He averaged 6.4 yards per attempt, albeit in the Big 12, as Steve Shute pointed out. Lack of defense there. 27 games played, and he had a pretty good 2016. 323 carries for 6.3 yards per attempt. This guy is a classic downhill power back. He's not sort of a Jay Gruden type of guy. He's not a receiver particularly. Only had 13 receptions in 3 years, so he's not really a receiver.
Wow, that's
classic,
really low.
But he's a power back.
Yeah.
Sure.
This is the guy who's going to run downhill and get you 4 yards.
Got it.
That's who Donta Freeman is.
Next.
Jamal, go quickly.
But
do you have any? Jamal, quickly. Do you have anything on Freeman?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I haven't watched much of him. I just know I've seen a couple of his games where he's shown that power, but he's also shown the vision that he's capable of. It was actually against the Big 12, so it wasn't necessarily, like you said, it wasn't necessarily much defense. But I was surprised that he ran like I want to say he ran like a 4.4 something at his combine or something.
He ran a 4.55 is what I had listed.
Mm-hmm.
You said a 4.55?
4.55. I'll check the combine. So keep talking. I'll check the combine real fast while you're talking.
Oh no, that was basically I was just surprised for his size that he ran. It was a pretty impressive number. So if it was 4.55 and not a 4.45 or something, then I was mistaken. So I was just surprised that he moved so fast for his size.
Okay, now we're gonna get to the Apostle Joe Mixon. We have spent time on the show talking about the Mixon's off the field issues, so I don't think we need to go into our opinions now about that. They are what they are. We've already expressed them. Just briefly, he is, well, first of all, he's 6'1", 224. He's a big guy, ran a 4.48 40, so he's kind of an athletic freak. He only played 2 full years at Oklahoma, 25 games, averaged 6.8 yards per attempt for his collegiate career, 2,027 yards, 65 receptions, 894 yards. Had 17 rushing touchdowns, 9 receiving touchdowns. Had a very good 2016, 6.8 yards per attempt on 187 attempts rushing with 37 receptions. Averaged 14.5 yards per reception, which is a heck of a lot for a running back.
Yeah.
The off-the-field issue, for those of you who don't know, is he was caught on video. He hit a woman and knocked her out, and that's the off-the-field issue. He's also had other issues off the field, though. It's it's a lot to get he's off some teams' draft boards because of all this.
Yeah.
But listen, the guy is an electric runner. He has the ability to break it long. His stats are inflated a little bit because of the Big 12 defenses, as Steve Shoup pointed out earlier in the episode. Because of his off the field issues, he's projected as rounds 2 through 4, depending on how NFL GMs see him. So from an on the field perspective, Jamal, what do you think of Mixon?
Like most say, he's a lot of people have him as I'm not even about to bring that, because a lot of people would say that some people have called him, is what I should say, a generational talent. And he would be first rounder if it wasn't for all these issues, but I wouldn't go that far. Personally, I do like what I see from him on the field. The fact that he's able to, his vision stands out is one of the things that a lot of people praise him for. But I'll just keep it short. The one I do have a few issues, and I'll just tell you guys to do some homework on him. Just look at a few of the reports that's out there, because for some reason I figured, there was so much hype around Joe Mixon. I was like, well, where are his balls? Like I said, I'm not a college scout, so the only thing I had to rely on when I looked at him was his scouting reports. This is one of the few backs that I really, honestly, truthfully, haven't even heard of until like the last few weeks of the season. So I just relied on the college scouting report. There's just a few things that does concern me that I don't think are fixable in the NFL. One of the few things that are fixable that was mentioned was the fact that he's impatient sometimes, and he may miss a hole. So because he likes to bounce things outside when he doesn't see, he likes to look for the big play essentially. So just take a look at his scouting report, see his strengths and see his weaknesses, and more importantly, look at his weaknesses and see if that's the guy that you want to see.
Okay, and the next 4 names on the list, ranked 7 through 10 by Walter Football. Some names you guys remember: Marlon Mack out of South Florida, Kareem Hunt out of Toledo, Jeremy McNichols out of Boise State, and Brian Hill out of Wyoming. Just the only notes on this, I have here that the 2 guys that are, sort of better receivers. McNichols out of Boise State had 103 receptions. So look for that. All these guys are projected sort of round 4-ish.
Yeah.
For those guys. But McNichols is the guy who had 103 receptions. So, he played in the Mountain West. So there's, lack of competition there. Kareem Hunt out of Toledo, has potential starter potential. A decent receiver.
He's a name I keep seeing a lot of for some reason.
He's a decent receiver, decent running back. He's 5'10", 216. But again, the issue is competition. So that's running backs, for you, or for our draft preview. So I think it's pretty likely that we draft one of these 10 guys. So you want to move on to quarterbacks?
Yeah, because we're already running a little long there. So why don't we do the poll first, since that had to do with quarterbacks, and it's a great way to intro the whole situation.
All right, poll question this week. The NFL draft is in 2 weeks. If the Redskins draft a quarterback, what round do you think it should be in? And because, again, we only have 4 categories on Twitter, the categories were rounds 1 or 2, round 3 or 4, rounds 5, 6, or 7, or just don't take a quarterback at all. Those were the choices. Alex, what do you think?
I don't think the Redskins will take one in the first round. I think most people would see that as like the official death toll for Kirk Cousins' career here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to guess at the same time, you need insurance. So I'm going to say people said rounds 3, 4,
Okay.
something like that.
Jamal, what do you think?
Yeah, I felt round 3 or 4. Obviously, well, we know the reason. So
Yeah.
take one
Yeah.
as early as possible, but not too early. Make sure you fill their needs up, or focus on your needs first before you look for a guy who may be able to fill in for Kirk. So 3 or 4.
Okay. Yeah, the public voted by a vote of 44%. They did vote for rounds 3 or 4, so that won the poll. In second place with 31% was rounds 5, 6, or 7. The 18%, and call me one of the proud 18%, although I didn't vote, but I would have, was 18% was don't take a quarterback at all. We don't need one. And then 7% said take a quarterback in rounds 1 or 2. My take on it is, this is not the year to take a quarterback. We already have a young developing quarterback in Nate Sudfeld. Let's roll with Kirk this year, and then we'll worry about quarterback next year. I don't want to take a quarterback and mess up the relationship. So that was my take on it. But you want to move on to
yeah, why don't we go through some of these quarterbacks really quickly?
Yeah.
So let's start off by saying we're not going to get Trubisky or Watson.
Thank God.
They will both be drafted probably before the Redskins' 17th pick. Even if they're around, I don't see us taking one, for reasons we just stated. And here's the thing. When I really kind of started watching some of the quarterbacks, none of these guys are really first-rounders. Neither of those guys really should go in the first round. They have so many mechanical issues. Any quarterback we take has to sit a year, probably 2, before you can realistically say they would be ready to start. So with that in mind, I want to go through a couple other names, guys we could take in that 3rd, 4th round if they drop, who might be interesting. The first one I want to go over is Nate Peterman from Pittsburgh, 6'2", 225, transferred in his second year to Pittsburgh from Tennessee. Last 2 years, he's completed 61.1% of his passes, 5,000-plus yards, 47 TDs to 15 interceptions. This is a name that kind of popped up for a lot of people during the Senior Bowl. He was kind of the standout quarterback at the Senior Bowl. So I watched some of his Gruden QB camp stuff, or I'm sorry, not Gruden QB camp, just people breaking down his playability. He isn't a Kirk Cousins. You hear a lot of people say he's got the cerebral thing like Kirk does, but when I watched his highlights, he doesn't have that West Coast kind of arm. He doesn't throw side to side. He's a deep ball thrower kind of quarterback. He actually tends to miss on guys running those easy 5-yard out routes, which was kind of interesting to see. Somebody pointed that out.
It's what you need in a Jay Gruden offense.
Exactly. But I don't know if you guys have any opinions on him, or if you've watched any of his film, Jamal.
About that, I haven't had the opportunity to look at him. I do know just some of the comps that's out there about him, with actually one of them being Kirk Cousins. So it was just that's just the one thing I can say about him. So I guess they see the potential in him to be, some guy who can be a competent starter one day under the right tutelage. So I'm assuming if he was to come here, Jay Gruden would be the guy to teach him, how to run this system. But like I said, I don't. That's all I can say about him. I don't really know about him on the field.
Yeah. I mean, I'm no Peterman expert either. I mean, if he's not a West Coast quarterback, don't draft him. The only thing I'll say is that Mark Bullock was more positive on him than that. Bullock thought he would be a good fit. So take that for what you will. We'll have to get Bullock on. If we draft him, we'll get Bullock on and have him do a full breakdown of him.
And I think if we draft any of these quarterbacks, that might be a good idea.
Yeah, we might get Bullock on anyway.
Yeah.
So
all right.
Next.
So the next name I'll go over is Brad Kaya out of Miami. Now, this is an interesting one. He has set a bunch of records in Miami as a quarterback, which is kind of impressive. 3 years as a starter, 38 games, 3,000 yards every season he's played, just under 10,000 yards in 3 years. 69 to 24 TD to interception ratio, probably a 3rd to 4th round pick, so he could fit in pretty well there. There's two things that I noticed watching him. Well, one, this isn't watching him, but they've changed head coaches or coordinators and stuff every year he was there. So I kind of worry about that Jason Campbell thing, which is funny to say because he kind of looks like Jason Campbell in that he's a tall, lean quarterback who's not very mobile. Like he doesn't have quick feet at all. But he's always looking downfield to make that, check down pass if he needs to when, pressure's getting to him. He does kind of buckle under pressure, though. Also very Jason Campbell-like. So that would be my comp for him.
Yeah. On Kaya, if you guys want an entertaining clip, watch the John Gruden quarterback camp with Kaya.
Mm-hmm.
Kaya's talking about how his tooth shattered in the middle of a game.
Yeah.
And how he had to spit out the pieces of his teeth. And John Gruden looks like he's about to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
Overhearing that story, which I thought was really funny.
It reminds me of the whole Joe Theismann story years when he was with the Redskins and lost his front teeth.
Yeah, in terms of Kaya had a good I was impressed with him at the combine. I thought he had fairly decent mechanics. He looked pretty good. I think he's a decent prospect.
I think he's got good mechanics,
prospect.
But there's some mental stuff that's got to get worked on with him. And he seems like a smart guy. I watched that Gruden QB thing too, and you can always see if a guy's got it in the brain watching that. That's the one great thing about those Gruden QB camps.
I just felt he was inconsistent. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just felt he was inconsistent. I know that was before last season even took off. He was projected, like a possible first round talent, possibly the first. Like some people considered him, as probably the best quarterback to come out of this year's draft class. But he played himself out of that position. Like he's considered one of the better prospects, but he's not the best. Like coming into the season, and it was a lot to do with the inconsistency on the field. And then, Alex, you mentioned it already, the fact that his play changes when he's under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And people can make a legitimate argument like what quarterback doesn't what quarterback remains the same under pressure.
Sure.
But there's drastic differences between a guy who can still stay in there, hang in the pocket, and make the proper throw,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to a guy who can, potentially they see something coming, they see some big defender coming into their face, about to hit them, and then all of a sudden everything else is off about them. Their mechanics, their proper technique as far as throwing the ball to upper
Mm-hmm.
body. So those are the things that people mention is the inconsistencies and how occurring they were. So that's just one of the things with Brad Kyle. Like, are you willing to take the chance? Like, is he going to be a guy who you can mold into somebody who can become more consistent and become a better quarterback in the NFL, or is this something that's just going to happen throughout his career?
Mm-hmm. All right. Next one is Davis Webb, Cal quarterback, 6'5", 230. So he's got that prototype size. Threw for 4,300 yards, 37 touchdowns, 12 interceptions last year. He transferred from, I think, Texas Tech. He was there for 3 years, but lost the starting job because he got injured. So he's got some health issues that, that's always a flag for any Redskins fan. Anyway, he's got really good arm strength and reads the field really well. He's got a very short throwing motion, which I kind of noticed when watching some of his highlights. But good deep ball. Like I said, he's got the kind of read the field thing going on. And the comp that I saw somewhere was Dak Prescott. So,
not too bad a comp.
Not a bad comp, but you got to watch out for guys with those injury concerns.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say about that is, Cal has a history of producing pretty good quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Some guy named Aaron Rodgers, came from Cal.
Right.
And there's been others. So,
Jared Goff last year, who we'll see, but
Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, there's been others in the past. So
right.
If you have to bet on a quarterback program, Cal's not a bad one to bet on.
No. Well, Goff is a guy who I think they should have sat last year and never let him start.
Yeah.
All right, so one name to kind of make note of here, Deshaun Kaiser. Probably will go in the first round, Notre Dame, but he's somebody who people seem to think would be a great fit for the Redskins for some reason. I don't see it because he's a real read option quarterback, which I want to avoid that again.
Kaiser is Kaiser's inconsistent,
Mhm.
and he underperformed. He was supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country. He was an elite high school prospect. He was
Right.
supposed to take Notre Dame to the promised land, and instead he underperformed.
Isn't
I don't
every
think he's a
quarterback
first-
supposed to take Notre Dame to the promised land? Isn't that kind of like the rap?
Yeah, and part of it's just a Notre Dame thing, and their
Yeah.
high-profile program and all that. But I mean, Kaiser in particular underperformed.
Yeah.
So
Any
I
thoughts
don't
on
want
Jamal?
Kaiser on Redskins.
I don't necessarily think that he's just a read option guy. I do believe that Kaiser's the type of guy who can throw from the pocket, and who's actually capable of doing that consistently. But he just happens to be a mobile guy as well. But I don't think he uses his legs as for Redskins purposes. I don't think he uses his legs as much as Robert does. Or Robert has in the past. He's the type of guy who'd rather, he's a throw first guy, but definitely as far as throwing the ball, his arm is just not consistent. That's one of the issues that I had with him as well this year. When I did watch him, was sometimes he have his games. He looked good against Texas, but hey, that was week 1, and that also happened to be against the Texans defense in the shootout. But it just happened to go down from there, and they also didn't win that game, by the way. But it just went down from there, and
Sure.
a lot of people would like to point out that his injuries around him, not necessarily him, but the injuries around him played a big part as well in terms of why they weren't winning. So there's definitely question marks and legitimate ones with them.
Okay. Well, okay, so the last person I'm going to mention, and this is just because of homerism, sheer homerism, is C.J. Beathard from Iowa, grandson of Bobby Beathard. Probably a 7th-round pick, if even that. We might be able to end up getting him as an undrafted free agent because he did not have a good year last year. He plays at Iowa, like I said, so they're more of a run-first, short-passing game kind of school. So his numbers don't really wow you. Only 58% completion, only 5,500 yards, I think, in the last 2 years. So really not amazing numbers, but he could be someone you might see brought in somewhere as a backup, potentially 3rd stringer next year, working his way up to 2nd stringer.
But what he's got going for him is his name is Beathard.
Yeah, that's the only reason I even mention him is sheer homerism of he's a Beathard. Just like I when in 2-3 years when Mark Rippon's nephew is ready to get drafted, I'm gonna go nuts over that. So it's just that's the way I am as a
Mark
fan.
Rippon has a daughter who's a quarterback.
Yeah, his daughter was a very good quarterback.
Lingerie quarterback. Yeah, she was in the Lingerie Football League.
Right.
As a quarterback.
And she was actually probably better than some of the quarterbacks in the NFL.
Quite possibly.
Ooh, okay.
Well, maybe not any of the starters, but I would put her up against.
Put her up against Colt Brennan or Tim Tebow or Colt Brennan and see how she does.
Yeah, I would trust her to hit a 50-yard out route versus any of them. Anyway, so that kind of does it for the quarterbacks. Like you said, Steve, it's not a great class, but I think at least 1 or 2 of those guys that I mentioned, they'll get drafted in the 3rd or 4th round and eventually become a starter. I feel like Webb or Peterman, if you put them in the right system, let them get comfortable, they'll develop well enough. They might not be elite.
I like Brad Kaya out of that bunch for my choice.
Yeah, Kaya has that potential too. You just need to put a good line in front of him. He'll get killed if he's got a bad line in front of him.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, I agree. So that's quarterbacks. We're running a little late here. There was a dearth of Redskins news this week. As you guys know, it was fortunately a quiet week, so we don't really have much to discuss in terms of Redskins, which is why we spent an entire hour on the draft this week. But the continuing open question is whether Kirk Cousins can sign his
right.
Will
and
sign
I think
a
that's a big
deal.
reason. The only reason why we need to look at quarterbacks is because of the Kirk Cousins situation.
Well, that was where I was going about this. That there's one school of thought that says if the Redskins may try to get Cousins signed or traded before the draft, just because of the effect his contract with the Redskins or another team would have on the draft. I don't see it personally. I think the Redskins will hold out until the bitter end in terms of contracts. So, although it makes some sense what that school of thought. Personally, I think we're going to be having this discussion all the way into July. And so I think the Redskins, if they draft anybody, they'll draft a low-round quarterback at most.
All right, and I think that should just about do it for this week's episode of the Hogstyle. I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank Jamal for calling in. I want to thank Steve for doing 2 days worth of recording this week.
In one day, yeah.
Yeah, in one day. And I want to thank you all for listening. So have a great day.